I know it.
And our stream is live.
All right, great, thank you. All right, don't have my mallet, but call the meeting to order. First up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. All right, first up is approval of the minutes of December 20th, 2021.
Don't move.
And, well, let me go a little further, because Amanda pointed out there was not amounts there on the December 30th date, and that was,
You do the minutes.
oh, excuse me, jumped ahead,
Yeah, that's okay.
got all messed up. All right, approve the minutes of December 20th, 2021 and January 11th of 2022. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Don't move. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any corrections, additions, deletions, otherwise? All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, now, on the roll of accounts. December 30th, 2021, it is $346,333.14, if you'd like to make that note on your agenda. So, is there a motion to approve the roll accounts dated December 30th, 2021, the amount of $346,333.14, and dated January 13th, 2022, in the amount of $211,361.63?
Move to approve the roll as adapted.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Earl. All right. Any discussion? All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you. Report of committees. We have Jay.
The Technology Committee has met twice. I was only able to make one of them, so I can only report on one of them. But what we talked about was a couple of things. First, that it's probably time to develop a multi-year technology plan. And the feeling of the group is that developing multi-year plans has been a good exercise, but that a lot of times it gets impacted by the 1 year at a time nature of our budgeting. So if there is a revision of a long-term technology plan, we need to try to get some sort, we obviously can't make a commitment as a board, but we obviously have to buy into that as a long-term process that takes a commitment of whatever the plan might call for to get the outcome that we're seeking. So that was one topic we spent a fair amount of time on. We also talked a little bit about, we've been using from a curricular perspective, the work of John Hattie, his visible learning and the things that have come after it. And he has not, in visible learning, talked about educational technology. There is a 2021 article that he wrote about technology education and using some of his meta-analyses to come up with ideas of how we should be looking at technology education in the same way we're looking at other curriculum upgrades. So the committee hadn't done anything with that. It was just something that came up. I don't know if it came up again in the last meeting, but that's the sort of things that we were talking about.
Okay. As far as that long-term plan, is there something, I mean, I know things have been a little iffy from year to year lately with Milty. Is that settled to the point that that's usually the bigger piece of our long-term issues?
Well, Milty is a component, but there is an international standard for educational technology planning. And those standards give you stages across a variety of ways that technology is used in education. So I think if we identified where we are in each of those and targets, then if Milty helps us move towards some of those directions, that's fine. If it doesn't, then we have to decide what we can afford to do. But I think the planning is independent of Milty. Milty just helps in a lot of ways to achieve what we're likely to come up with if we develop a long-term plan.
Through the chair, did you say international?
Yes.
And just for our newer members, Milty, if you're not familiar with that, it's the state program that has provided laptops and iPads and so forth over the years. If you're not familiar with that, I'll throw all these acronyms out and so forth. Okay, well, we'll see what the committee comes forth with. Very good. Any other committee reports? Okay. Administrators, who shall we start? We have Jen here. Why don't we start with Jen? She's right in front and center.
I'm not sure what's that in the front. So in special education, we all continue to hear in the media about the impacts the pandemic is having on students' emotional and mental health. So to support the needs of students who attend Winslow Public Schools, we've had our Edtech training on understanding trauma and working with students who are dysregulated. Staff continue to participate in the book study and web-based training from the Online Trauma Institute. The Goodwill Workplace Readiness Boot Camp actually is beginning this week. It's Wednesday. It's going to run once a week until the end of the school year. We've identified 10 students that will be participating in the 11th and 12th grade. The class aims to teach students about gaining and maintaining employment. There'll be discussions about job exploration, post-high school and secondary options, along with resume building. And if during the class, the student would like assistance in development of and participation in a work-based learning experience, they will have assistance to do that.
Any questions for Jennifer? All right, thank you. Oh, Mr. Bell.
All right, just wanted to update you on two different things. First thing is we're still waiting for our NEAS report back. I am expecting it any day now. I was really hoping to have it for today's in-service, but unfortunately we didn't have the final product. So today with the staff, we looked at each of the different priority areas that we had been working on, reviewed kind of where we were at, and set goals for what we want to accomplish between now and the end of the year within each group. Departments work together to look at their different common assessment data tracking, which is one of the big priority areas that we were working on, to look at what kind of data are we collecting in the classroom, and then how can we have a system in place to better make decisions within each department moving forward. So that was a big part of what today was. And on behalf of the teachers, I just want to say thank you to the board for providing an extra in-service day for tomorrow. It's going to give some very well-deserved and needed time to prepare for kind of the unexpected in the future, that if for some reason we did have to go remote, that there is a plan in place. And if we're remote and a teacher is out sick, that there's a plan in place for the students to be able to continue working in their absence. So tomorrow is definitely needed for that. So thank you for that.
All right.
That's
Any
it for me.
questions for Mr. Bell?
All right.
Very good. Did Chris have anything to add? All right. Well, we'll go right to Jason with the junior high.
Good evening, everyone. So a couple updates. We have our Renaissance Assembly coming up on Wednesday when students return. That was a postponed assembly from last month due to COVID. Our advisors. So we're going to recognize students for their academic success on Wednesday. Just a quick staff update. The last time I reported out, we were short, looking for 5 different positions. Some of those positions are shared with the high school. We're in the process of hiring a registrar. So we've done the legwork the last few weeks with Mr. Bell and the committee. Working with Jen to cover our special ed needs, replacing Mr. Hensby from last month. So we're also in the midst of that and hopefully have someone soon. We interviewed today and been interviewing for our nurse. Our nurse is leaving us. Unfortunately, she's taken a job at the state level. The good news is we have applications for these positions, so we're looking to replace that position. PE is still in the works, and as you can imagine, we're struggling for substitutes and trying to meet every morning with Chris and trying to figure out how to best serve our students in these positions. And then our art position, we're still also in the works to fulfill that. So 5 pretty heavy duty positions that we are trying to fill and working hard at doing that. Our students completed the second iReady math test last week, 7th and 8th graders. So we have a second data point this year. So there was a training this morning and a follow-up meeting tomorrow. We're going to meet with district-wide, I want to steal your thunder, Michelle, to start digging into the data to see where kids have improved and looking at resources and where to try troubleshoot some of the gaps for their learning for math. Echo what Chad said, we had the department meetings today, and thank you on behalf of teachers to the board for allowing that extra day tomorrow. And the last one is a thank you. I don't think we thank enough. I had a guest family visit today just to do a tour. They have some interest in bringing their 8th grader to Winslow mid-season, if you will, because of some things. And the family walked into the building today and just said how pristine the building looks. So we did see the custodians in our past, so the family did compliment them. But Shelley, kudos, because the building's in great shape. So thank you, Shelley, and to your staff. And that's all I have, Joe.
All right. Any questions for Jason?
All right, thank you.
Good, great, thanks. All right, Erica.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So January is the time of year where we do our mid-year assessments. We have already mostly completed our iReady math assessment, and we've just started working on our DRA assessment. These assessments allow us to see student growth and also plan for instruction from this point until the end of the school year. Today, during our teacher workshop, we had training with our iReady representative on using our midpoint data reports. Teachers were able to look at that data and really decide where to go next, which kids had made growth. There were a lot of interesting things that were noted. Some of our students who are the ones that struggle had also had the highest percentage of growth. So they might still not be on benchmark where we'd like them to be, but the amount of growth that they made. One report I was looking at, one student who struggles both academically and behaviorally in that class had the second highest. I think he had 127% growth on the scale, and he's still not where we want him, but just seeing the amount of growth the students are making, I think was not only great for me as the building administrator, but for the teachers. So they were able to really sift through that information today. So that was helpful, and they worked on next steps. So what do they do with it now? And they'll work on that more again tomorrow. So after that, we asked our teams to revisit the remote plans in case we need them. We're still crossing our fingers that we don't, and working hard every day to make sure that we can cover all of the staff absences that we have. We also went through and worked on one of our school goals, which is about data and using it to inform instruction. And we did that by way of looking at a sample pre and post assessment for writing. Our Lucy Calkins unit we've had for a few years now, but COVID has put a cramp in a lot of the stuff that we've done for professional development. And one of the areas that we really wanted to look at was we have these documents for pre-tests and what do they show? So we were able to walk through that. There was a variety of questions that I posed to the staff. What do you notice? What goal could this particular student have? what are some of the lessons within the unit that we don't need to spend as much time on? And so we were really able to sift through, one of the columns was red, which this is from my old school, it's a sample from my old school, but it was punctuation. And so then we had this whole conversation about across the board punctuation all the way 5th and 6th grade continues to be, a struggle even in our building. So really talked about what we saw on that data sheet. It's not just a place to record information, but it really is a place to use that information to inform your instruction. And teachers will continue to work on planning for instruction tomorrow. And as everybody else has said, they appreciate the fact that they were given some additional time to work on these things. So thank you for that.
Any questions from Mrs. Galloway?
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. Any of the assistant principals from the elementary have anything to add? Okay, very good. Michelle?
Good evening. You heard most of what I was going to share with you about iReady. We had a very successful day, three different presentations for segments of our faculty, looking at the second data point, looking at growth. What does that tell you? Where are our kids? And my view of that platform is a district view. So when I pulled that up this morning, I was very encouraged to see that what we would have expected our growth to be at the midpoint of the year, we were actually above that. So that was encouraging. When you dig into that, we've got some individual students where we wonder, but we were talking and with our presentation today about, okay, so what do we do with that child that we thought we'd see more and we didn't? What does that mean? So really rich conversation. So I was really encouraged by that. The only other thing I'm kind of starting to work on, and Jay alluded to it, is the technology director has been talking about updating the technology curriculum across the district for some time now. And so I kind of wrote out a plan on how we might move forward with that. And I am going to start executing that plan tomorrow. I'm going to do a listening tour of each grade level to just get a list of what do you do with technology with your 5th graders. There's no right or wrong answer here, just what's the list? Just tell me what it is. We teach them about Google, and we got Google Classroom, and all the things. I just want to see where across the district are all the things happening. And then go back, look at our updated standards, and then start putting that together into getting a clear picture of where kids are getting the technology standards in our district. Where is that happening? Are we missing anything? So that when we graduate our kids, how do we know that they have everything they're going to need? So that work starts tomorrow. Yes.
On the curriculum for technology, the guidance counselor is going to be what's the right word, brought into this conversation because they may be hearing things from colleges, what they expect. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Do you think that's?
Yeah, that's a great, yeah.
It might be that your curriculum should lead to
Right.
X, and they
Certain
know.
skill set, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a good audience to think of that. I'm sure we would get there.
Yeah.
But the interesting
Eventually.
question about the technology curriculum is, and this is always kind of the debate, do we have instructors specifically for technology curriculum? And in some places we do. And where we don't, whose responsibility is it? Are we going to say it's the classroom teacher's responsibility to do this portion of the curriculum while we have but some portions of it, this specific computer teacher does it? So that's always the question, like where do you put all the technology stuff? Whose responsibility is it? And there are two schools of thought on that. So we'll kind of be navigating and learning about all of that. But my first step, as I said, is just to go by grade level and let me just hear. Do a listening tour. What are you 5th graders doing? What in 4th grade? We do a spreadsheet? Who knew? Great, let's put that on the list. Because I think there's a lot going on, especially now, that we probably don't even realize how much technology is happening, just par for the course to get through a day in these times. So I'm looking forward to just getting a snapshot of where everything is, and then we can sit down with a group, a committee, and sort through that. What does that mean for us and where do we go forward?
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Shelley Phillips.
I have nothing. We're just plowing snow and throwing sand. That's all we're doing right now.
Lots of sand. Okay, very good. I assume Jim is
He's up there in the gym.
out of the,
Jim is in the gym.
Jim is in the gym doing his duty there, so. Mike, did you have anything from the WEA for us?
Other than echoing the building administrators, thank you, I have nothing further.
Thank you very much. And welcome to Ray. He's our former council chair, from what I understand, and our new council chair is Dale, right?
Yes.
Macklin?
Yes.
Okay, great. Did you have anything from the council to share with us? Welcome.
Well, I was glad for the invitation, and I talked to Peter last week or so. And I think the main concern that I have being new is I know there's been a great increase in the communication between the town council and the school board in the last few years. And I'm pretty sure that's gonna continue. And we can have, especially this time of year, again, I'm new with the budget's coming up. That this is gonna be a critical time of the year. And in talking with Peter, I think we're gonna get together and we'll have some good communications between the school board and the council going forward. That I can assure you.
All right, we appreciate that. Very good, thank you. All right, did I get everybody? I think I did. All right.
Before you move on, Joe, you want to check with Jason to see if Doug and Pete are here, because I don't want them to wait
are.
if they don't have to.
Oh,
So if they're
that's
here,
right.
remove that on the agenda.
Do we have
They're here.
Doug and Pete? They are? Oh,
They're here.
you can see that, okay. So, if there's no objection from anyone on the board, since we do have Doug Breer and Pete Pelletier to talk about the construction update, we don't want to keep them waiting while we deal with our other business. So if we can get them up on the screen there somehow.
You don't need a motion or anything, just thumbs up.
As long as there's no objection, we'll go by consensus. All right.
Can everyone see me and hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Doug Breer, Stephen Blood Architects. Good to be back. Wanted to give you a quick update on the project. Let me try sharing my screen. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is what I showed you back in the end of October of last year. Second floor, some elevations, rendering. And what we did in early January 12th actually, we went to the school with Pete Pelletier and Scott Clark from Ledgewood Construction. We took all our engineers with us. We met with Peter Tivitat, we met with Shelley Phillips, we toured the building. And a day or two later, Pete Pelletier called me, and given the current market craziness in the construction industry, he's obviously concerned about the budget. And there were a couple of things he brought up to me that made a lot of sense. This is a roof plan that you see of the original design for the addition. And one of the things this does, it puts snow load on the existing roof, creates drifting. And Pete's concerned that we're gonna have to go back and do some extensive reinforcement of the existing wood trusses. And there's another issue that he brought up is we've got a 2-hour firewall. It's required by code because our building is maxed out in terms of the size. So we have to build a concrete masonry firewall. And if we go back to the earlier plan, you can see where our addition is tucked into the existing building, and it touches in many different ways. And so what Pete suggested is, what if we looked at another option where we did something like we did over at the band addition over at the high school, create a narrow connector to that addition. We try to minimally touch the existing building, not put snow load on the existing building, not build a very complex firewall. And I thought those were great suggestions, and right away I put together this sketch. Very rough sketch, but you can see the what Pete was talking about would be outlined in the orange, and I've dashed in the original design. And as you can see, the amount of exterior wall that we're contacting on the existing buildings is quite a bit less. So I ran this by Peter Tibatot, and he said, it's definitely worth looking at it. Let's talk about it. So after following that, I started looking at this in a little more detail. And here's a Google Earth photo. And here is this proposed addition, option 2, shown in red. And as you can see, it's going to extend a little further out from the existing building. And that, I think, is a potential drawback to you, because I know the soccer field is important over here. But let's keep looking at this. Here's the floor plan of the first floor. And you can see these are the 2 existing exit doors. We keep one pair that continue to exit to the outside, go through a little courtyard, and then we create a connector that goes out to a much simplified 2-hour firewall along this line, and then there's the rest of our addition. It's basically the same size as we had before. Here's the second floor. It lines up with the first floor below, and this space here, where my cursor is, that actually would be covering the exit below this covered entry. So you'd still have weather protection there. And this is just a very rough 3D view, no detail. I just wanted to give you a sense of the massing and how the addition would impact the existing school. One nice thing about it is we wouldn't need to cover up these existing windows that you see right here where my cursor is. It would keep some natural light into the corridor that's existing. There's another view, and one more view. So that's one of the things we want to talk to you about tonight is this worth pursuing? And I can let Pete answer questions or talk to you about the potential cost savings by doing this. Are there any questions about?
John has a question. Go ahead, John.
My question is related to long-term thinking, because this whole addition is built on the fact that we had to change the numbers of people. And I'm thinking, is this going to be as future planning? We were going to extend this if we needed to.
Yeah.
Is this going to change that in any way, or is this going to complement that, or is it going to stay the same?
It would stay the same. Everything just moves out a little bit from the existing building. We would still, where my cursor is here, that would be future expansion. We would continue this corridor straight through. And on the upper floor, just like we were going to do before, we would create a corridor here to at least 2 more classrooms out here.
And can you?
We would probably have to build a stairwell. If the next time you expand it out, you would probably need to build a stairwell because we'd be too far away from the existing stair over here.
Can you show the where those would show up from the outside on that other picture? In other words, where would the expansion be in the previous picture there there?
Yeah, it will be right here where my cursor is.
I just wanted to clarify it.
So it'd be same idea for expansion as before, it just, everything moves away from the existing building a little bit.
So Doug, I've got one question for you in that first floor exit that you're maintaining, one set of doors that goes out.
Right there.
I guess my question is depending on where that snow comes off the roof lines and so forth, is that going to be a problem to maintain that? It just seems to me like it's going to be a big snow catcher.
Yeah, potentially, there's some pitched roof that empties into this area. There's not a lot of it though. We could look at an option where we don't do this, where everybody goes through that corridor to get outside, just like we were doing before. This was thrown together fairly quickly just to get your kind of global reaction. But if you didn't want to exit directly out in that courtyard, we could certainly look at keeping those doors and they go into a new hallway and then out just like before. I'll show you on the original design. We would do something like this. Where both sets of doors, you don't see them here, but both those doors are going into a corridor and then everybody goes outside through the same set of doors. And we could certainly do that again. I guess I was thinking that it might be nice to divert some traffic away from this corridor, potentially. Maybe less of a disturbance, but it's up to you how you'd like to see that work.
Okay. Jay, go ahead.
Related to the snow question, there's not a lot of pitch off the backside of the building. So do you anticipate significant cost in order to drain that new courtyard that you've created? It seems to me it could be fairly dark and be a lot of moisture buildup, which is not good for the bricks in the long run. I like the look of the design. I just want to make sure that we're not creating challenges we're going to have to deal with further down the road.
Here's that roof plan again. So that's the pitched roof that drains into that courtyard. And as you can see, it's a really short section. Most of the roof, this is the ridge line up and down. Most of the roof drains the other direction or around the courtyard. So we wouldn't be adding a lot of water to that courtyard. And we would certainly look at the drainage. We'd want to get drainage out of the courtyard, whether we have to do a little catch basin or we can do it with grading. We'd have to look into that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But these are preliminary plans. It probably wouldn't change the time frame at all.
No, I don't think so. We might need a little extra time to catch back up, but we're still looking at was it April, May for final pricing, I think.
Correct. I think that's what we had on the schedule. We were going to do a design development budget sometime the end of February and March. We would have a pretty good handle by then. This is Pete out there, by the way, with construction. And when I did the walkthrough with Doug and the engineers, it became pretty obvious that we were going to spend a lot of money trying to tuck that addition into the existing school knuckle there, and with not getting a lot of benefit out of it. I mean, by pushing it away, we're minimally impacting the existing schools, so you can spend most of your budget on the addition. That was really the focus on this, was try to minimize the amount of rework that had to happen within the existing school that didn't gain you any square footage. And the reality is, I'm really concerned about the budget and the market, the way things are right now. So I figured everything that we can do to try to minimize costs in this early preliminary stages, we're going to be so much further ahead.
Is there any further information on time frame affected by the supply problems in the country?
It's ongoing and nobody sees an end in sight right now. It's a problem that we're dealing with in every project. And the real frustrating thing is we can't put our finger on what the next problem is going to be. Things that you would typically could run down to the local warehouse and pick up are no longer available. And it's causing impacts and delays everywhere. So delays are one of the problems we're dealing with, but it's just the cost increases because the supply is so been diminished that prices are skyrocketing, and subcontractors are having a very hard time even quoting work because they just don't know what they're going to ultimately end up paying for the products they're going to need for the project. So it's a challenge in our industry right now, and we're stumbling and struggling through it the best we can at this point.
Thank you.
So Doug, is this something that you can get us a copy of this plan with some basic dimensional information so we can kind of evaluate how that fits our campus?
Absolutely. I'll get that to you in the morning.
Would it be prudent, based on the current circumstances, to increase the size of the contingency in the budget?
From what I understand, you got a fixed budget, so.
That is correct.
Well, right, but you build into your budgeting for a project, if you have to scale back the project to have the percentage of contingency that you usually put in your plan, then it might be contingency needs to be larger proportionally to the project than you typically would have, because you've always got a budget.
Yeah. That's definitely an option that you can look at, but my recommendation is let's get to our first initial budget, to give us a gut check and see, is this project doable for the money that's available? And then you can.
Maybe the question would be answered by this question. Are you comfortable with the contingency the way it is right now?
Well, again, I don't know what the contingency are, the plans that you already.
Discuss that.
So
That's premature, okay.
So I mean, this project, would be like our last project where they'd come back with a guaranteed maximum price. So that would be inclusive of the various contingencies, because there's a couple of different ones in the project.
Yep.
So I guess, obviously we'll have to see where things end up, and they'll surely let us know if that's not going to make our budget. But yeah, so I'd like to review the plans a little further myself anyway, before weighing in a little further. And I don't know if Shelley's seen them at all yet to evaluate what that looks like for her and any thoughts she might have on it. But be good if we have a little bit of time with it before we say yay or nay.
Yep. Yeah, I'll send you those dimension plans tomorrow and give you as much time as you need. But the sooner we can decide on a direction, the quicker we can get the drawings ready for Pete to price out.
Right.
And as before, as a construction manager, we're gonna do a design development budget early to give you a feel for where we think the price is trending, and then we'll actually do the final bidding after the design is complete. Doug's gonna get us some preliminary drawings to get that design development budget so that in front of you as quickly as we can.
Okay. Any other questions for Doug or Peter?
I guess without having you do twice the amount of work, it would be nice to see what we're comparing, apples to oranges. I know with the firewall and the intricate roof, I know you're looking at probably a larger amount, but it would be nice to see what those two amounts are, even if we don't have one, if that's possible. Just
Yeah, we could. I mean, the reality is, what I would recommend is not just because I suggested it, but to go with this option, because I'm convinced it's gonna be your cheaper option. And then I can once I have this information for the subcontractors, we can give you a ballpark of what it would be if you went back to the first option. Like I said earlier, the concern is you're gonna be spending a lot of money to reinforce the existing roof, to build on top of the existing roof, to create crickets, to force the water away from this addition. Now you're touching an existing roof. The issue is the warranty on the metal standing roof, the structure below it, getting access to that structure. Does that mean we're gonna have to take ceilings down inside the existing building to do the reinforcing of the trusses, giving up space for that work to happen, or trying to get it to happen during the summertime, and then having to put those finishes back? Those are all costs that you're gonna be spending. That's not gonna gain you an extra square footage. That's my concern with that option. That's all.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, Pete, and that's exactly why I'd like to have you do it, because at some point in time, somebody's gonna ask us, why did you do a bump out rather than connect to the building? And I wanna be able to thoroughly explain why. Because we wanted to do this with the monies that we had available and not ask for local monies, additional dollars for this to happen.
Understood.
So just going back to the question on water into that little corner there. What's the roof line look like on this addition? I assume the addition itself is that intended to have a pitched roof to the outside? I mean, and also the bump out portion itself, because if that's pitched, where is that gonna dump its water? That would add water that isn't getting there now.
The roof of the addition would be a flat roof, be a rubber roof with internally drained roof drains that would tie into a storm drain system.
And if you think about it, that little courtyard is not going to see any more water than it's currently seeing. So whatever the drainage issue is there now is what's going to exist. Now, the opening gets a little pinched. So that's why Doug says, the engineers are going to have to take a look at that, and maybe we'll have to do maybe a catch basin or a structure to collect the water in that courtyard. But other than that, it's not changing the amount of water that's going into that courtyard, because like Doug said, the proposed addition would be a flat roof with internal drainage, so none of the water would spill off the roof.
Okay, all right, that was information we didn't have.
Yeah.
There's a storm drain out there.
Is there? Yeah.
Right off the edge of the concrete that the two doors, four doors, pairs of doors go out through. It's right to the right of that as you exit the building. So it's gonna be right there in the corner where that little.
Easy to tie into.
All right, so maybe they put it in the right place. Something going in our favor. All right, we'll look forward to your email, and then we can kick it around a little bit, make sure we're happy with that direction.
I guess the thing that I would just like to say to everybody who's here, Pete Pelletier and Doug Breer are just outstanding to work with, for those of you who don't know. Ledgewood Construction and Blatt Associates, they have just been an outstanding job with the last project that we had. It was amazing to work with them. We have a beautiful product. We had comments earlier today about walking into the buildings, people who were visiting, and we did that being very fiscally responsible, and we plan on doing the same thing with this particular project. So we have all the confidence in you gentlemen, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank
you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, the last project with these guys, this sort of conversation with the building committee is what helped us save some of the money that we've got available to do this, actually. Because we these cost saving ideas, and Peter in particular is very astute at understanding where the money's getting spent that's not doing you much good in square footage. And so that's good information to have. So, all right, so we'll look forward to that email, and we will get back to them. All right, so where do we leave off? I think we're at finance report. Amanda.
The budget abstract that you have in front of you, 55.90% of the fiscal year has gone by. 56.54% has been accounted for. If you remove encumbered items, 55.44% of the budget has actually been spent out. This is fairly tight. We're keeping a close eye on it. One thing to consider when we pull these reports, we run a roll of accounts typically twice a month. And so the numbers that you see here really depend on when we do the roll of accounts. For example, I pulled an abstract today and already 56.71% of the year has gone by, but we haven't spent any more money since we did last week when I pulled that report. And it would look even better tomorrow and even better the next day until we run a roll of accounts and then we kind of
Go back the other way.
go back the other way again. But like I said, we're keeping a close eye on it. We're aware of some things and that's where we're at.
Thank you. No big surprises, I assume. Okay.
Well, I think the piece that we really want to emphasize, and Amanda has done a nice job with it, is if you look at the percent of the year that's gone by and you look at what we've spent, you cannot look at this budget and say that we aren't fiscally responsible. When we say that we ask for monies to run the schools, looking at how tight this is running right now, halfway through the year, is a demonstration of that. And Ray and Dale, I want to thank both of you for being here tonight. It means an awful lot to us to have you here and hear these conversations, because what we're going to talk about tonight is kind of an overview of how we put all of this together. And it's important for somebody to understand that so that we can have those conversations with others as well. And then in future meetings, we'll actually get into the cost centers that we're really going to be talking about tonight. So thank you for being here. It's really important.
Yeah, I can only say after the last 12 years that it's really an honor for myself to be associated and to be part, very small part of the other building. And I can understand when you say that you have confidence in those people, but confidence in your staff and the fiscal responsibility that you all exhibit under the strain that you're at the present time. It's just, my hats are off to everybody in the room and everybody in the school system.
Thanks, sir.
Go here for what, like you always do.
I think,
Go ahead, Dale.
I was just gonna say it's appropriate at this time and really appreciated what Raymond has done. Ray has always supported our educational needs, and I really am glad that you've come to as many meetings as you have, because it shows that you take a true interest in education. Thank you very much.
And definitely Ray's asked the appropriate questions at the right time. So that's an important part of that.
Well, it's not a question, Joe, but if these numbers come out, the year-end numbers come out the same as these, I think we'll get along just fine.
It's gonna be close.
It's pretty typical.
But that's typical. There's not any extra VAT in this budget, and we don't have a history of that. That's for sure. All right, well, we'll talk more about the budget development process here shortly.
Very soon.
So next up is Peter's report.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank Mike Thurston for letting me borrow his glasses. I'm not sure if these are readers or if they're his regular glasses. I forgot mine in the office. I can't tell you how nauseous I am right now, Mike. So thank you. but I can see the words on the paper, so thank you very much. So, and speaking of Mike, negotiations have begun. We are negotiating two large contracts right now. The teacher's contract, of course, is the largest contract, and the Edtech contract is the next. I'll talk a little bit more about those in just a few minutes when we get into this budget process and how the whole thing evolves. I do want to talk about COVID-19 cases because John has asked me to give you an update in each of our school board meetings, and we're trying to do this and simplify it just to kind of give you 1, 2, 3, 4, So John had asked, can you give us a breakout of cases and how things are going? And we stopped sending the robo emails to parents because we were getting them every single day. And we notified the parents in the community that what we would do is we would post that information to the website. So if you go to the health and safety website, the robo emails that we used to sell are still there. You can see them. But this is a kind of a summary of what's happening. You can see that starting in September, if you go September, October, and November, and December, and you take a cumulative of all of those cases that we had from September to the end of December, we had 176 COVID cases. Last month, January, we're still in it, we're 188 just for the month. So things imploded with Omicron, just imploded. And it's caused a tremendous strain on this district, as it has with every school district. And if it were not for the efforts of all, and I say all, because it is taking a village to make this happen, we wouldn't be able to run and stay open day after day. And so great pride, great kudos to everyone who's making those efforts to make that happen. So that's that. Any questions on those pieces? I will mention to you that the SOP has been updated. If you'd like to see what that updated SOP looked like, it's now posted on our website. It was posted today with the changes. One of the major changes that's on there, well, before I get into one of the major changes, let me tell you something that's still the same. We've been doing pool testing since the start of the year. We continue to do pool testing. We've been looking at disinfecting, and we're looking at, social distance as much as we possibly can. That's still in place. So all of the safety features that we've had all along, we've continued to maintain those. One of the things that is different is the contact tracing. Because of the number of cases, what the CDC is recommending to us is that everybody should be considered a close contact all the time. So everybody in this room right now tonight, consider yourself a close contact because this variant is spreading so quickly. So we tell everyone, watch your symptoms, do the self-check in the morning before you come to school. Everybody should be functioning as a close contact. The contact tracing has been suspended by the CDC momentarily as a recommendation for us to take, because we can't possibly keep up with the contact tracing. To give you one example, a few weeks ago, we had a case at the junior high school. There are 2 grades at the junior high, grades 7 and 8. So out of the case that we had, we ended up having 163 close contacts. There's only 180 somewhat students in those 2 grades. The nurses work well beyond 9 o'clock into the night to do all of the data and input that they needed to do. They can't work night and day and come to school and take care of your kids. Neither can the administrators. And so that's a great reason why the contact tracing has been suspended by the CDC, because they understand that this variant is so contagious that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. John, you had a question?
I just want to do a clarification both for the new people and for the audience members that may not remember. These numbers, tell us about how they break down, and not number. I'm not asking for numbers, but these numbers include positive cases from staff and from students.
Yes.
Yeah. So that could, and I guess that leads to what I wanted you to talk about, maybe for a very brief. I'm not looking to make this last all night, but it's really vital if we have staff numbers go low, because then you're shuffling people into positions. Just touch on what you've had to do, and just so the audience / new people understand what that entails.
Well, I'll pick on Carl Price just for a second. Kyle Price puts out an email every single morning at about 5 o'clock, 5:15. A list of people who are not able to come in today because of COVID related in some way. There are some days when Kyle has 12, 13, 14, and Erica, people on that list. And if you look at the side of that, and some of those Edtech says, not covered, not covered, not covered. And you sit there and you scratch your head and you say, wait a minute, it's not covered. How will you function? How are you staying open? Because they're saying if anybody has an opportunity to cover this period in this particular emergency, or it's sometimes taking people from the Title I staff and being able to fill some of those holes. And we're paying some of those people when they fill those holes by contract, some additional dollars in order to cover those classes. So when you see that budget is running tight, if you take a close look at our sublines right now, our sublines at the elementary school, we only had budgeted $35,000 for the year based on a 3-year average. We've already spent 42. We got to get through a second half of the year, and we got to find a way to make that happen. So when we say we're running tight, but it's situations like this, John, are severely hampering our efforts to keep going.
I just wanted to update everyone that's here in case they didn't know all that,
Mhm.
because it's important to understand what goes on a daily basis just to make everything work. And it's not as easy as it.
I can't even begin to.
Yeah.
And it's the same in every single building. Any building that you go in, people are doing the same to make it happen. Jay, did you have a question?
Yeah. Based on this, I would just suggest that you and Joel maybe think about in February whether or not a remote school board meeting is appropriate. Us being here gives more exposure to all of our building people who are here. We don't need it any more than we need it, and perhaps next month might be a time that would be prudent to do a distance-based meeting. I'll leave that to you, but I just bring it up for your consideration.
Yeah, consider that, and we'll see where things are trending. I mean, I know I've seen it in my workplace too, it's trending there as well as everywhere else. I assume everybody's seeing it.
Not that this is a scientific, but I looked on the CDC website and they had links to different things, and it showed Omicron in the Northeast having peaked, but the peak goes up, the peak goes down, it always could go back up, but at least it's headed in the right direction the last 2 weeks, or not even 2 weeks, 10 days.
Well, we'll see where we are for the next meeting.
Right.
Hopefully it's back down to where we were before the beginning of the year. But, well noted, Jay.
You have a question?
Dale.
Yes, Dale.
The question I get around town most of the time is, and based on these figures, do you have any thoughts on how close are you going to virtual based on the numbers that you have now?
How close are we going virtual? So one of the things that this board was very adamant about, because last year we were in a hybrid model. And not only was this board, but if you look at all of the research and the data in terms of in-school learning versus virtual or out of school, it's much more effective if we're in school. So our number one priority is to keep everybody in school learning 5 days a week for as long as we possibly can. The answer to that question is, honestly, I don't know. And let me give you an example of that. I'll pick a morning a few weeks ago. I'm in the parking lot doing drop-off duty with parents. Shelley Phillips, Kyle Price are driving buses because we don't have bus drivers because they're down. If they weren't doing that, we wouldn't have been in that day. I go into the elementary school and Edtech is swabbing the floor in the cafeteria. Social worker is feeding breakfast. These are just quick examples of what's happening. Erica is teaching an art class. She's the principal. Michelle was teaching something that particular day as well. Everybody is doing whatever it is that they need to do to make it work, which which is unbelievably awesome. And I gotta do a shout out for parents right now that are listening as well. Because we've got parents who are reaching out to us and saying, my child is sick, I can't send him to school. And they're giving us the information that we need to have to keep our school community safe. We had in-service today, and we had 9 parents call in and say their child had COVID. That's amazing. Because if they sent those kids to school tomorrow, it would just spread more. So we have an incredible community that cares about their children, that cares about us staying in school, they're working with us. So Dale, it's hard to say what the answer is to that question. You know, Mike's here, sitting here tonight as the association president. Mike's saying, you know, let's do everything we can to keep kids in school. That's awesome. I kudos to him for saying that. Other school districts that I'm familiar with, that I have communications with, the ones that are functioning like ours, the same thing is happening. It's this kind of effort. They're throwing away. It doesn't matter what my job is. My job is whatever it needs to be done to get things done right now. That's my job. That's not that way everywhere. So the answer to your question is, as long as we can, Dale. I don't have a specific number. I don't have a specific whatever that would look like. But if we had a situation where 4 or 5 bus drivers go down, we have to really regroup and say, okay, who can we get in school? If we had a situation where 10, 15 teachers got COVID and couldn't teach, you're not going to ask them to teach remotely from home. You have to have a plan in order to what it is you're going to do. That's part of what tomorrow's day is for. And thank you again, board, for allowing us to do that. But it's complicated, and there isn't solid answers to a lot of these pieces. When we say every day we hold our breath, or every day we get up and we do whatever we need to do to make it run, we're not kidding. This isn't normal times. Every day is an adventure to make this happen. Anybody in the audience like to jump in? You guys are living it. Anything that I've missed?
Summed it up pretty well.
I would say that one word kind of sums up what we've heard is professionalism, and I appreciate it, so.
I'll say one quick thing is the students need to be commended for being as flexible as they are, for having such a variety of people in their classrooms, in their daily lives, and not, you know, the consistency is important, and they don't have a lot of that right now. So hats off to them for, you know, being flexible and adapting to whatever's being thrown at them. Certainly notice on my end for what I do each day.
Just being in the school is this.
That's a great point to bring up, because they have adapted with staffing changes and last minute, you need to go here, you need to go there, and the students have been pretty seamless. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
The only other thing I'll add to the SOP, the CDC have made it very clear, you know, that some of the guidelines have changed. Some of the restrictions don't seem to be as severe in terms of the quarantine, because they're going from the 10 days to the 5. And they're saying that's because that the most infectious state is in the beginning, prior to, and those 5 days. So they've allowed that to happen if you are universally masked as an organization. And we have been universally masked as an organization since day one. And so that's a real, truly important piece that we continue to maintain and follow.
Thank you for the numbers. I see the continuation of this being important, especially for the people who can't attend the meetings and can clearly see the data backing up our policies.
Thanks. That's all I have, Joel.
That's all I got. Okay. Very good. Hopefully next month, we'll be talking about how much improvement there's been on that front. All right. Next up is public comment. Something I started doing, and I think we probably ought to put this with the public comment information on the website, but anyway, a lot of people, we don't have any people here for public comment this evening, but we do have people tuning in online. So this is a statement to give people information on public comment should they choose to want to weigh in, and of course they can do so in writing. So if you're online, feel free to send your public comments. So before I open up public comment sections of our meeting, I wanted to provide some clarifying information for those who have not participated in our meetings before. School boards are elected to govern their schools. Our meetings are for the board to conduct the required business of the school district. By law, this business is conducted in the view of the public. While these meetings are in the public, they are not public meetings, as is a legislative session is not a public meeting. They are in the public, but are not intended to be an interactive question-answer public meeting. The law requires us to provide a public comment period during our meetings. The public comment period is your opportunity to express your views within the guidelines of our policy. It is not an open discussion period. Accordingly, do not expect the board to respond to your questions or concerns tonight. While a simple question that is raised in the public comment period may be answered at the discretion of the chair, for a more thoughtful and thorough response, we suggest that questions be emailed to the appropriate building administrator first, then the superintendent, and then to board members if you'd like to pursue it further. Please keep in mind that a response may take a few days due to the requirements of the day or allow time to gather the information requested. I also want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you choose. In order that we can hear from the largest number of different voices and have time to conduct our regular business, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. At the outset, after being recognized by the chair, we ask that the speakers identify their name and town of residence. Please try to be brief and try not to repeat yourself. Please direct your comments to the board. The board will not permit complaints or allegations against staff members or particular students. These are matters which the board is not permitted to hear in public. If there are complaints against staff or students, these will be handled appropriately through established policies and procedures. We know discussions of school-related issues can get emotional, but please remember our children are watching and we are neighbors, so please be civil. We will not permit profanity or shouting at one another or comments that disparage or attack individuals or groups of individuals. Thank you for your patience while I make this introduction. I have hope and confidence that your participation will be helpful and constructive to the board. So while we have no public, unless our council chair or Councilman Ray Karen would like to comment during the public comment period. Anybody listening online, just want to make sure everybody's informed. So if they choose to come to a public another meeting and want to comment publicly, that they are informed as to the process. Mr. Ferry.
I do have a question because I've never really thought, I started looking out at my administrators. We do have some Winslow residents who are also administrators. What is their status when it comes to public comment? Are they allowed to comment if they wanted to?
Well, they are citizens.
That's what I thought. So we should always at least open it up to that in case that is the case.
Okay, well, public comment is open, so if anybody has any comments that you'd like to make, that you haven't already made, in your professional capacities. All right, hearing none, we'll go on to old business. Construction project update, we actually already did that with Doug and Peter. We'll move on to new business with the budget development process, and Peter will give information on how that process goes for our new members and our new councilors.
So we'd like to talk about tonight is just a view from 10,000 feet and just spend 10 minutes on this. Just a quick overview of what happens when we put our budgets together. And so when we start having the actual meetings and you start hearing presentations, you'll know what's gone into this. And again, I thank Dale and I thank Ray for being here, because this is an important piece for you guys to hear. Because often you're here, what do you base this budget on? Why are you asking us for money, kind of thing? And the budget's always based on goals. What are your goals? And we have two major goals that we always focus on for every year. Obviously, it's student achievement. And when you look at the student achievement and respectful and responsible behaviors. So when you look at those major goals and you think about, well, where do these things start? It starts in the spring of the year. We have a process where the administrators have a retreat in the spring of the year. We take a half a day. Actually, it's when school lets out. We take a half a day to look at how we did on our goals, how we did on the goals that we said we were going to establish for the year based on the data that we looked at to establish those goals to begin with. We dissect that into that information, and then we take that information to the leadership retreat, which is a much larger group that meets in the summer. And if I look around this room right now and I said a show of hands, how many of you have been to the leadership retreat? What do I have for hands here? So if you see the majority of the hands that come up here, so you have a nice cross section. And each of these hands that goes up has other individuals. For example, Mike put his hand up. The FLT team at the high school will be at the retreat. The elementary school team will be there. The junior high team will be there. So you have teachers from each of the buildings, the leaders in each of the buildings going to the retreat, looking at the data that we have on kids to see how they're doing academically and under the respectful and responsible, the piece that we wanted to focus on was attendance. Because we felt if we could get kids in school, we can help them because we have a lot of programs in place to make that happen. So those are the two major pieces. So that's how those goals get started. And that's kind of the 10,000-foot view. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda so she can talk a little bit about some of the bits and pieces of what you're going to be seeing.
Okay, so for the budget development process, the budget starts at 0. So that means every year, each request that we have and all payroll information needs to be entered into our budget. Payroll is entered by payroll specialist Melanie Drew. She works in the Waterville office on account of Winslow. She's one of our shared services that you'll hear a little bit about later on. There are various cost centers within the budget, and each administrator is responsible for entering their section of the budget. The cost centers within Winslow's budget are Board and Central Office, Winslow Elementary, including maintenance, Winslow Junior High, including athletics and maintenance, Winslow High School, including athletics and maintenance, special education, technology, transportation, alternative education, certification, health services, and ELL. They all have their own section of the budget to be entered by the administrators. There are various sections and lines within each cost center. This is a very small portion of the elementary budget. You'll see different lines, and each of those lines has a specific number based on its area and function. Peter and I, we research histories of each of these lines. We look at averages and we make comparisons to previous years, and we prepare questions before we meet with each administrator to go through their budgets of each of their cost centers. When we have all that information, we create a summary and a revenue sheet. This is an example of a summary sheet. It's all the different cost centers added up, and it makes comparisons to the previous year. A revenue sheet is the total cost of all the cost centers with the projected revenue sources. This brings us to our final amount and the increase or decrease over the previous year.
So we will go into detail when we get into the various meetings of each of those screens that you've seen. But essentially, when Amanda showed you those cost centers, right now the building administrators, the directors, FLT members, they're feeding the administrators. Here are some of the things that we think we need in our budget next year based on our goals, based on the things that we're working on. So they're putting this information into the budget. We're seeing that Amanda and I are going over their lines. Then we schedule a meeting with them once they know that they've had their budget in. We dissect each line with them, looking at a 3-year history to see how costs are going up or not going up. We look for certain things, and we look to see how it aligns with the goals. Once that piece is completed, we have a full session where the budget is fully completed, and we start looking at, we bring that to you as board, as you know, for a first look. And we have conversations about, does this seem reasonable? Sometimes you'll say, that's way too much. We need to take a look at that. So then we go back, and that last screen, building a budget is a fluid process, which as we continue to look at the needs of the district based on our goals. And our goal is always to have a balance. What are the needs? Also being fiscally responsible to the community. It's a two-part piece. So that's a 10,000 look view. Jay.
What does FLT mean?
Faculty Leadership Team. They are the teachers in each of the buildings that work as the team leaders in the different buildings, different departments, different grades. They meet on a regular basis to talk about goals, to talk about things that they need, both managerial and academic.
Thank you.
My question is for Amanda. I don't want to add more to your plate, but I thought of something that might help us in sharing a simplified version of an overview. He says from 10,000 feet. Is it possible to do something very simple like a 3-year average pie chart that we could share either online or with the citizens / concerned people? Because you could take a quick glance of a 3-year average and see that, because what I hear from citizens a lot of times is the athletic department spends all the money in the town, and I know that's not true, but it would show up very clearly in a simple pie chart. Is that something that's doable? It wouldn't be, I don't want to
No, it's okay.
put you
I've
to
actually done that
some,
before. So of each cost center,
yeah, like the major cost centers, just divide the 100% so people can see this is where the money's spent in a simplified version, so that one glance, one page, because they're never going to read the whole budget. They might, someone might, but a typical person by looking at that would be able to say, okay, I see where the money's spent. I think that would be beneficial for communicating in a simplified manner for the citizens of the town in a way that is pretty easy to understand.
We thought it might be a good idea to just throw a few other pieces in this presentation and just talk a little bit about some of the other things that we look at when we put a budget together. And that's hurdles that we encounter, things that we do to assist with the budget, because we often get asked that as well. Don't we write grants? Don't we do certain things to help this budget? What do we do to help this budget? And so, there are some things when you build a budget that you don't have a whole lot of flexibility on. So those are some of the hurdles that we face. And let me give you one example that's a major hurdle right now, and that's inflation. So when you think about inflation, and I'll just throw fuel oil at you as an example. Last year, we used 50,000 gallons of fuel to heat our buildings. Now that was a significant savings because we basically shut one of those buildings down. We didn't, but we used CARES money to keep it open, so it wasn't local dollars. So we saved significant money in gallons in oil. But at 50,000 gallons last year, at about this time of the year, we were able to lock in at $1.99 per gallon. Right now, today, if I locked in, I'm at $2.79 per gallon. So for the same oil, right now, I have to budget an additional $42,000 just to pay for the oil next year. I have no control over that. And so, you get into a situation where you say, okay, you play this game. Wait. Do you wait? You lock in? What's the reports? What are the reports saying? What are the experts saying? We're making phone calls to the experts saying, okay, what do you think? And some will say, and they use this terminology, back something, which means that the oil in the future is going to be less than the oil that you're going to try to go for right now. So we wait. But it's a guess. If somebody says to me next week, we can get you oil for $2.50 a gallon if you lock in right now, you can bet your bottom dollar I'm going to be over to Shelley and I'm going to say, Shelley, what do you think? We got to go. $2.50? We're not going to do any better than that. And we're going to move and find a way to lock that price in there. But that's just one example of inflation and things that we can't control. Everything is, and they heard it tonight. This project that we want to get done, we're very concerned about the cost. And so that's why we had this conversation that we had this evening, so we don't find ourselves in a bad situation 5 months down the road. So that's one. Another big piece, contract negotiations. You know, keep going back, Mike's sitting here tonight. Contract negotiations, so we have several contracts to negotiate. One of them is the Edtech contract. I can tell you right now, the Edtechs and the secretaries, if you compare what they're making per hour versus other Edtechs and secretaries in the area, we have some major work to do because we're not competitive. And we've got to get that amount up there so that we are competitive. We're going to lose those people to other districts. So that's major work. And that's something that we will work on in negotiations this year. You mentioned a pie chart, John, and we can do that, but I tell you right now, 80% of our business is people. That's where all the money is, because we're an organization of people working with children. Other hurdles, potential loss of funding sources. Title V, Michelle does our titles, and that's federal dollars that she writes projects for. There's a significant amount of money in those federal dollars that helps us. Title V is one simple example. We just found out that we may not get Title V monies this year. And one of the reasons we may not get it is because our poverty rate isn't as low as it has been in the past. Now, you can look at that two different ways. You can say, wonderful, our poverty rate isn't as low, but then on the other hand, you don't qualify for additional funds and that we've had in the past.
It's not as high.
Correct, I'm sorry. Yep.
It's at 20%. The Title V funding formula has changed from the federal government. So they no longer are taking data from free and reduced lunch forms. They're taking data from a different source. That different source puts our poverty rate at like 11-something%, and it has to be 20% to meet the threshold to receive Title V funding. So we are likely out of.
So this is the same throughout the whole state. They're using this formula.
Yes.
Now,
Throughout the whole country.
It's federal. Throughout the whole country, okay. Well, but the state is who budgets us the money. And that's where we were based on free and reduced.
It's federal dollars. Title money is federal dollars.
Oh, okay, title money, but I'm talking about is our 279?
We haven't got to that yet.
Oh, okay. I was getting ahead of you. I was thinking 279.
How much is that goes into the budget each year, Title V? How much money?
The Title V isn't a whole lot of money. It's
Probably, I'd have to look it up. I'm guessing $19,000.
but what it does pay for is we use it to pay for academic behavioral services.
Right.
So that's a huge service for us, and it's not something that we want to lose. So we've got to find a way to fund that if we can, because we have a lot of kids that depend on that. Other things that we try to that are hurdles for us. Student count. If your student count drops, you receive less money from the state. Our student count has dropped a little bit, and they're taking the average. They're looking at the last 3 years because of COVID, and a lot of kids that have gone to homeschools have gone to remote learning. So that's hurt us a little bit, especially the homeschoolers, not so much the remote learners. But we've had a drop in our count of about 23 kids from last year. That hurts. Because it's not 23 kids of kindergarten where it's one class and you can say, okay, well, 23 kids, you don't need, that's not how it works. It's spread out all over the district. But you take 23 students at about $7,900 a student, that's a significant amount of money that you lose if you don't get those kids back. The other thing that we need to look at is property value. So our poverty rate is not as high as it was, and our property value is increasing. Those are both good things, except if you're hoping to get some additional monies to support your schools, because if your property value is going up and your poverty rate is going down, then they say you can afford to educate your children. So it's a challenge for us. That's another challenge. It's a good challenge to have, but it's a challenge. Things that we've done to assist the budget. And this is important because oftentimes council members, you will be asked the question, well, doesn't that school write grants, or don't they do things to kind of help offset the budget? And so what are some of the things that we do? A few years ago, we went with a service center agreement. And that service center agreement is we being Winslow, works with Waterville, Oakland, Fairfield, to do some contracting with certain services where we provide some services throughout the course of the year. And if we have that service center agreement, we get monies back on our 279 that John was referring to. And for us to do very little professional development, we could have a custodial professional development thing in the summertime that we get together with the other communities. To do that 2 or 3 times a year brings back a revenue of about $64,000 to us. So because we've done the paperwork, we've done the applications, we've done that type of work, that's a revenue source for us that we weren't getting before. Solar energy. I know the council was looking into solar energy a few years back. We've done that as well. We are in a contract with Competitive Energy, and in another year or so, not this coming year, but in another year, we're looking at $37,000 a year in savings and bill credits. So we've done those things to position ourselves to try to help with the community. Recruiting efforts. Chad just left, but Chris is still here. Every year we go and try to recruit Vassarboro students because they have choice. For every Vassarboro student that we can get to come to Winslow, that's about $11,500 for us. Last year we had 41 students. Now, out of those 41 students, I believe we had 17 that went to the tech center. So when they go to the tech center, you don't get the full amount, you get 2/3 of that 11,500, but it's still a substantial amount of money. So it's a benefit to us to get Vassarboro students to come. And we love having Vassarboro students come to Winslow because I think we offer a good programming for them, good opportunities for them. And after they've done the visit with Chad and they've come to the high school, they've usually had a great experience. Each year we get 8 or 9 new students, keeping that at about 40 somewhat students.
Dale, did you have a question?
Yeah, just on the solar. Right now, there are 5 solar projects on the books at one stage or another in town. I'm assuming that may grow in the future. I don't know. And the technicalities of it, I don't know. But I'm assuming what Peter just mentioned, tying into these, if there are more solar farms available for this energy, is that going to benefit the town any? The programs that Peter just mentioned.
How it benefits the town is that if we can buy those tax credits, those tax bills, that's $37,000 a year that we can apply towards something else in this budget that we can use to help offset costs.
Yeah, I guess the solar energy that's going to be produced in town in Winslow. Is that part of the grid that you get?
No, our grid is not in town. No, we've bought into another company a few years back that's being developed out of town, and it's a consortium with 10 other communities. It's a very large one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I find.
ESSER funds, you've heard about that. Those are the federal dollars that could be used in times of COVID. You can use those monies in different ways. You've heard about the different ways we've used that. The building project, the expansion is one of the ways in which we're trying to use that. If we can utilize those funds to make that happen, we can have increased class size, which is good for our community, good for our students, without having that extra burden on the local taxpayer. So those are just ways in which we've tried to, look at the budget, some of the challenges that we have. Looking forward, we are scheduling meetings to meet with the administrators, and we will be back at you, looking at what evenings can we sit down and look at the various budgets and cost centers and get that process rolling. And that's it.
Definitely when we get budgets in front of us for the new members, it'll come together and make more sense. It's a pretty thick document when we're all done with that. Any questions? Okay. More on that to come as we get portions of the budget. Next up is vote on appointments.
And we have an appointment to add, if you would, please consider.
Okay, if there's no objection, we could add to the appointments.
Rachel Agassi, registrar at Winslow Junior Senior High School, both buildings.
And her new hire form is in the back of your packet.
John?
Move to take them as a group.
Second.
If there's no objection, all in favor of taking them as a group? And it's unanimous, very good. Do we have a motion to approve the group of appointments?
So moved.
Moved by Jay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Hillary for the second. All right. All in favor of approving the list of appointments? Very good, it's unanimous.
I have another one before you go to the next one.
They're coming in as we speak.
That's a good thing.
We got 5 openings.
Yeah.
Four now. All right.
Not a good thing.
You want your 3?
Under resignations, I have an additional resignation to add April Washburn, junior high school teacher.
Oh, man.
Been with us for quite a while.
She was Evan's favorite math teacher.
That is unfortunate. Obviously, resignations, of course, Peter accepts as they come in. We wish them well in their future endeavors and thank them for service to our schools.
Did we have a?
So
We don't, resignation?
Just to put her on the list.
Okay.
She wasn't on the list tonight. We forgot her on.
Okay. Any objections to putting her on the list? Consensus should be fine on that. You accept them and
We don't get the vote.
but, yeah, unfortunate departures. Other business, do we have any other business? Okay, hearing none, our next order of business is an executive session, so for those who are not part of that,
So,
I mean,
We got no. Okay, John.
pretty sure.
Yeah.
okay, well, we gotta have our motion and all that.
Motion to move into executive session per 1 MRSA section 4056A, resignation of officials, appointees, and employees.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of executive session? Very good.